Somebody stole the strongest object in the Norse world while its owner was asleep. The ransom note asked for a woman. She said no, loudly enough that her necklace broke off her neck and hit the floor. So the gods put a veil over Thor's beard and sent him to his own wedding. And the plan worked, not because it was clever, because of one line in the giant's own ceremony that nobody in that hall thought to question. Thor woke up angry, which was normal, and then he found out why. The poem opens with his beard shaking and his hand going out across the bed for something that was not there. The hammer was gone. He went to Loki and said it twice, the way this poem says everything twice. Nobody on earth knows this. Nobody in heaven knows this. The hammer is gone. The two of them went to Freya and asked to borrow her feather cloak so that somebody could fly out and look for it. She said yes at once. She did not ask what it was for. Hold on to that, because she is going to be asked for something else in about 4 minutes. Loki flew to Jotunheim and found the man responsible sitting on a burial mound in no hurry at all, plaiting gold collars for his dogs and trimming the manes of his horses. His name was Thrym. He was a giant with time on his hands and money to spend on animals. When Loki asked, he did not deny it for a second. He had taken it. He had buried it 8 leagues under the earth. And nobody was getting it back ever, unless they brought him Freya to be his wife. Loki flew home and delivered that to Freya directly, as an instruction. Put on a bridal veil. We are going to Jotunheim. And this is the loudest moment in the poem. She refused. The hall shook with it. Brisingamen, the great necklace, the one object in this story, worth as much as the hammer, burst off her neck and fell on the floor. She said that if she went along with this, she would be known as the most man-mad woman alive. Nobody had asked her. She had not agreed to any of it. And that refusal is the reason the rest of the story has to happen, because with a yes there is no plan, no veil, and no poem. So every god in Asgard assembled to discuss it, and nobody had an idea. Until Heimdall did. Put the veil on Thor, put the necklace on him, hang the keys at his belt, the way the woman of a household wears them. Put him in a dress and pin the brooches at his shoulders. And Thor's objection was not that it was dangerous. Thor was never once in his life worried about that. His objection was what he would be called afterward. There is a word in Old Norse, arger, for a man who is unmanly, and it was not a tease. It was a serious accusation, the kind people took to court. Loki ended the argument in one sentence. Without the hammer, the giants will be living in Asgard. So they dressed him. The poem lists every item, unhurried, the way it lists everything, the veil, the necklace, the keys, the dress, the brooches. And Loki put on a headscarf and came along as the maidservant, which was, it should be said, entirely his own idea. Then the goats were harnessed, and this is the one moment of undiluted power in the whole poem. The mountains split open and the earth caught fire as Thor drove to Jotunheim. He was wearing a wedding dress at the time. The poem does not comment on that. It does not need to. Thrym heard they were coming and told his household to get up and put fresh straw on the benches. He was pleased with himself. He listed what he owned, cattle with gilded horns, black oxen, treasure, and gold, and he said the only thing he had ever been short of was Freya. Then they sat down to eat. The bride ate an entire ox by herself, then ate salmon, then all of the delicacies that had been set out for the women. Then she drank 3 casks of mead. Thrym watched this happen and said out loud that he had never in his life seen a bride eat like that. And the maidservant leaned over and explained that Freya had not eaten for 8 nights. She had been so eager to get to Jotunheim. Thrym accepted this. Then he leaned in under the veil to kiss his bride and went backwards down the entire length of the hall in one movement, because the eyes looking back at him were burning. And the maidservant explained that Freya had not slept for 8 nights either. She had been so eager to get to Jotunheim. Thrym accepted that too. Then his sister came forward. She asked the bride for the customary gift, the gold rings, the thing an in-law asks for. She asked more than once. She got nothing back. Not a word, not a movement, out of the veil. And Thrym, wanting to get on with it, called for the hammer. "Bring in Mjolnir," he said, to hallow the bride. "Lay it on the maiden's knees." He had it dug up. He had it carried in. He put the most dangerous object in the world into the lap of the person he had stolen it from with his own hands, because that was the correct step in the ceremony and he wanted to be married properly. The poem says that Thor's heart laughed in his breast. What happened to the hall is told in about 4 lines. Thrym first, then his household, then the sister who had asked for the rings, killed in a single line in passing, while the poem moves on without stopping. It is the flattest sentence in the story, and it is the one that ages worst. And that is Thrymskvida. So where does it come from? One manuscript, the Codex Regius, written down around 1270. Last time the answer was Snorri Sturluson and 1 book. This time it is the Poetic Edda and 1 book. On the count of surviving manuscripts, nothing has improved at all. But there is a real difference here, and it is worth being precise about what it is. This is verse. It is in traditional Eddic meter, with the doubled phrases and the repeated formulas, and the patient list-making that material carries when it is built to be spoken aloud and remembered, rather than composed on a page. That is the shape of transmission, not the shape of authorship. And here is the complication, which I would rather tell you than skip. The age of this particular poem is disputed. There is a serious strand of scholarship arguing that Thrymskvida is late, that it may have been composed in the 13th century by somebody imitating much older verse extremely well, and a minority has gone further and suggested it might be younger than Snorri, or even his. So the honest version of what I promised you last time is not, "Here is the better sourced one." It is this. Here is the one in the older book, and the older book turns out to be a harder question than it looks from the outside. But look at what the poem knows. The joke at the end only works if the audience already recognized the step. A hammer laid in a bride's lap has to be a familiar part of a ceremony, or there is no punchline at all. The listener has to hear "bring the hammer to hallow the bride" and understand what is being asked for before they understand what is about to happen. Which means the poem is not really evidence of a god. It is evidence of a wedding. Somebody's real one. One that everybody in the room had been to. And that is the thing worth taking out of it. The hammer is taken by a rule while Thor is asleep, and it is handed back by a rule while he is sitting still with a cloth over his face. He does not find it. He does not fight anybody for it. In this entire story, the strongest thing in the world gets dressed, eats an ox, and waits, carried from one end of the poem to the other inside other people's procedures. The only person in it who freely chose anything was Freya. She said yes to the feather cloak, and she said no to the wedding. And every single thing that happens afterward is the result of somebody having to work around a woman who would not be handed over.